Hello, and welcome to Leadership as a Philosophy, Not a Checklist, Book Discussion 17, How Women Rise, by Sally Helgesen and Marshall Goldsmith. Okay, so a couple of things I want to say right before I get started. Number one, this book, I read it in 2018, right around the time that it came out, and my initial response to it was a little jarring, and I couldn't figure out why. What's interesting about it is it was before I finally started this whole project. So some things didn't sit well with me and I couldn't figure out why. I want to be absolutely clear about a couple of things. If you have watched all of my other work, which you should, my objective is to make sure that we identify and develop people that have the 4 essential characteristics: integrity, humility, empathy, vigilance, and the talent to lead. That talent can reside anywhere, but not everybody has it. Okay? So this is absolutely not any commentary on anything, especially if you go look at the Pareto distribution. The Pareto distribution, where it says 20% of any group has got all of the talent. Well, it applies to men and women. It applies to leadership. It applies to all sorts of stuff. So this is not in any way an attack on anything. So if you start off listening to this and you're taking it that way, you need to readjust your thought process. The characteristics and the talent that have identified great leaders throughout history until about World War II are consistent, and they apply to both men and women. Okay? So I just want to make sure that that's out there because I don't want anybody losing their mind. So go through this and pay attention. All right, let's get right into it. So my initial reaction. What I finally realized after going through this whole project and going back and rereading the book, because I put it on the production schedule 2 years ago, year and a half ago, is that this book is written in response to really bad leadership examples and environments. Okay? So what happens is these people, these 2 authors, and again, ultimate respect because they were able to write a book and get it published. I'm still halfway done trying to get a book done. Is that you can see that by listening to the things they're complaining about, you can infer the environment that they were operating in. Okay? Most of the recommendations are either incorrect or demonstrate a significant failure of leadership in these organizations. In other words, their recommendations are in solution to a bad situation, not looking at the ideal situation. My initial reaction was frustration because I couldn't understand why some of the things were being said because they didn't make sense. And then after going through this project and coming up with the Archetypical Leadership Model, which again is not mine, it's just what has archetypically been leadership throughout history, it then reveals the problems in their argument. It also identifies what they're used to operating in, which is an even further indictment on how bad leadership is right now. Many of the problems identified as women only, here's what you have to do as a woman, are really human only. And so based off of your personality and your interaction and the environment that you're operating in and the people that you're around, you're going to have some of the reactions that they talk about in here. So it's a little weak in that way. It should have just been, here's how to go after it. Here's how to identify the problems that you have, male or female, because the problems are not unique, except for with some personality differences. All right, so some comments before we get started on the 12 things. So the environment and leaders in this book was written, oh good grief, why did it do that? The environment and leaders this book was written to address, far from ideal. And it's most likely the only example that they've seen in their careers, because my contention is, as part of my discussions with people throughout the past couple of years, is that the question that we use to identify leaders: who would you voluntarily follow for no other reason other than you were going to get to work with this person? No pay raise, no increase, maybe not even moving expenses, maybe not even a promotion. This person just comes to you and says, I want you to come work for me and be on my team, and I'm going over here. And you say, okay. Right? I would say 40% of the people that I've asked How many, that question too, say nobody. And then there's about 30% say one. There's a couple that say two, and then I've had a couple that said several. So bad leadership is something that everybody's exposed to. And I think that these people have never seen a good example, because if they had, they could say, oh, wait, in this environment, this worked. So that's the fact that that doesn't exist anywhere in this book is telling. So rather than identifying characteristics and indicators of good leadership, the author's goal is to create a people in charge that are just as bad as the ones they're fighting against. So the little quote, I made this little quote. This is my own quote. So here we are in this corrupt system with bad leaders and a bad environment and all these terrible things. Here's how to maneuver in that space. That's what this book does. It describes it, and you'll see what I mean when we go through the rules. So instead of saying, here's an ideal, here's a goal, here's what really works, and let's aim at what really works, it's here's how to maneuver in a toxic corporate environment, which could be useful, but then you're toxic, right? That's why I say you're going to have the same, nothing's going to change just because it's a woman, right? So this comment right here, putting incapable people with poor character in charge is equally toxic and destructive regardless of their gender. So you put some incompetent idiot in charge and it's a man, it's just as bad as if you put an incompetent woman in charge, right? Nobody's exempt from bad character and no talent. And so that's one of the things that now that I've put all this project there, go back and look at it, now I understand why I was frustrated, because I was going, this doesn't, anyway. Let's go right into the next thing. So here's the 12 habits that the authors say that you have to break if you're a woman. So reluctance to claim achievements. So in the book, they say you need to go around and brag as much as you can about what you've done and take credit for what you've done and be over the top saying, hey, this was me, this was me, this was me. Well, what's that? If you've been paying attention, you know where that's going to go. Expecting others to notice your contributions. So this is sort of the same thing. Reluctance to claim achievements and expecting others to notice. It's the same rule. It should really just be one. But it's the same idea. If you don't go and tell anybody that you're awesome, then you're going to fail because nobody's going to know that you're awesome. Okay. Building, not leveraging relationships. So what's interesting about this, and I've got the comments are coming, is that they say you go and you build all these, as a woman, you go and build all these relationships and all this networking and do all this, and then you don't use that network to get ahead. So is that the only purpose of building relationships? Because I have seen men that do this too. They go out and they build relationships and then they don't use them to get ahead because they don't like manipulating people. But it seems like this rule is written, and especially the context of the chapter is the purpose of a relationship is for you to use that person to get ahead. Failing to list all of your allies from day one. This is the same thing. A bunch of these are the same rule, which bugged me a little bit too. Putting your job, so failing to list your allies from day one. So that's basically you get promoted and then you don't use any of your friends to help you out. Okay. This one annoyed me. Putting your job before your career. So it says, don't care too much for your employees. Don't care too much about your job. Make sure that you're focused on the next step and the next promotion. So if you look at it, this is toxic and this is a terrible environment. Your whole goal as a leader should be to take care of your people and achieve your goals. That's it. If you're doing it just so that you can get promoted, what's that? That's the button pusher. That's the box ticker, that's the person that's climbing the ladder, next rung. So the perfection trap. This one bothers me. It says, this one bothers me a lot because it's all about competency. It says, don't become the master of your job because you're not going to get promoted. If you're too good, they won't promote you. Okay, well, what's that? Right? What is that really? That's terrible. That's terrible. So your goal is to be just good enough so that people notice you. You take all the credit for your work, and then don't be so good that they don't want to promote you. So be average? Really? All right, the disease to please. This one's kind of annoying, but these three are sort of disease to please, minimizing, and too much. I'm going to discuss in my comment section. Ruminating, which means don't sit around and think about your decisions that you've made. Really? And then letting your radar distract you. That's the last. So those are the 12 habits that they should break. As you can tell, 1 and 2 are really the same. 3 and 4 are really the same. Minimizing too much and ruminating really could, or I'm sorry, the disease to please, minimizing and too much could really be lumped into one. Again, you got the book published. It's amazing. So, reluctance to claim your achievements. This is humility, which should be a good thing. You should be humble. You should do a good job and do the good job for the purpose of doing a good job, because then the things are going to move along. And because you're not bragging, people are going to respect you because you're just being good. I had something when I was in charge of an organization. I was command. And the unit had a bad reputation. And everything was broken. Everything was a big mess. And after about 45 days of really, really hard work and a lot, we were good at everything. And we won some competition. And all the people were all excited. And they were going to go rub the noses in the people that had beaten them for so long. I said, no, that's the worst. It's the worst thing you can do. I said, the best thing you can do is say, somebody comes over and says, man, congratulations. I said, yeah, I'd like to show you what we did so that, maybe you can get that good as well. Because that's just annoying to people. They really want to hate you. And so being good and then humble about it is way more powerful than being good and bragging about it. Expecting others to notice your contributions. This is an absolute lack of vigilance in leaders. This means that you don't have leaders that are checking. You've got a leader that's sitting in the office, not doing anything, not checking up on people, not asking questions, not being vigilant, not being empathy. This means the fact that they put that up there means that nobody noticed because nobody was looking. So that's an indictment of leadership. And then so I talk about the building, not leveraging relationships. Well, so like I said, relationships are you're just going to make friends with people so you can step on them. You're only going to find people that can do good things for you and then make friends and then manipulate them. That's a completely toxic work environment. That shows you how bad corporate America is, if that's the way it's supposed to work. Because what you should really have is you should go get relationships with everybody. Because, right, from the cleaning person all the way up to the CEO, you should go and make relations. You should go and find and talk to and be friends with, whatever you can do with all sorts of people. Because then what happens? Oh, hey, so-and-so got promoted. Oh, great job. That's amazing. Look, they got promoted. But instead it's, hey, I need you to push this button and talk to this person and call this guy and call this woman and do this thing. That's the worst, right? It's just manipulation. It's terrible. All right. Failing to enlist your allies from day one. This is another one. And this happened to me. I was thinking about this about 3 or 4 months ago. I got promoted to a new role, and I walked in and nobody, at no point did my boss pull me in and say, hey, people that have been in your situation have these sort of things that they need to watch out for. And here's some stuff that maybe you didn't know that you should do. So you get promoted, and this failing to enlist your allies means, you get into a new role and you're not sure what's going on, so you don't ask for help. Well, the leader should also be coming in and checking on you. How are you doing? How's things going? Any problems? What's new? Here's some things that you might need to think about because you're new. Here's some of this sort of stuff. And that's for male and female. It's not just a woman thing. So this means the fact that they're writing this down means that the environment that they've worked in, nobody was checking on anything. So everybody was being, claiming their own achievements. They were making sure everybody knew their stuff. They were leveraging relationship. They were doing all this stuff, but they weren't taking care of the people. Putting your job before career. This is terrible. To me, it's just terrible. It says, well, don't love your people too much. Well, right. But that's the whole purpose of vigilance and everything else, right? Is take care of your people. I think I've said it before in another video, but I'll repeat it here. I was at a school and there was a guy that had won the Medal of Honor, and he was an officer, and we were going to officer schools, and he was talking about things, and people were asking questions, and I really can't remember if I asked the question or if somebody else did. But I know that the answer struck me like a lightning bolt. And it was, hey, what's the most important thing about being an officer? He said, respect your superiors like they're your parents. Take care of your peers like they're your brothers and sisters. And take care of your subordinates like they're your children. And the promotions and the medals will all take care of themselves. I wrote that down, and then I tried to do that the rest of my career. I kind of knew that before, but when he said it, I said, oh, I got it. That's it. But care for your people is not just loving them all the time. It's showing them love by sometimes disciplining them or challenging them or pushing them. So this is a character thing. If all you're doing is worried about your career, then people are going to hate you. Oh, that person doesn't care about us. We're just stones on the pathway for them to be successful. So the perfection trap, it says, don't be perfect. Don't try to be perfect at stuff. Well, look, some people are perfectionists, and that's okay. And guess what those people are? Probably really great at managers. You go put them in charge of a system and say, I want this system operating at 100%, and they make it happen. Fantastic. Sometimes 100% isn't great for leadership. Hey, we got 9 out of our, we got 98% of our 100 of our goals done. Well, that's a success because, the last time we did it, we were at 70. So we're getting closer. But this is not just a female thing. I've met perfectionists before all the time, and it's terrible. And they're not good at being in charge. Absolutely. They don't make good leaders. But you want somebody in charge of a system or process, which as we said, managers do. That's amazing. So this disease to please, these next 3 are all environmental, right? So the disease to please means if your job is to make everybody happy, well, you can't, okay? But you might be in an environment where the boss and the person that signs your paycheck and HR and somebody else are yelling and screaming at you, and their goals are all different, so you're trying to take care of all of their different objectives. That's a terrible leadership environment. The goals should be unified. The instructions should be unified. There should be as few distractions as possible. Minimizing. This one is you're in a meeting and you sit over in the corner up against the wall and you're hunched down and you're not trying to say anything. Well, that's an environmental thing. And it's also not just a woman thing, right? Men do that too. I have been in organizations where the leadership was so abusive and so toxic that nobody said anything in meetings ever. We were just in receive mode and you just didn't say anything. Even if something was terribly broken, you didn't say anything because it would result in you getting yelled and screamed at. So everybody was like this, right? And I say it's environmental. So what if you have a leader that calls on everybody? Okay, so I've heard all about this sort of stuff. Haven't heard from you. What do you have? Do you have anything for us? Nope, I don't have anything. Are you sure? I said, because this is your field of expertise. That's a leader, right? I'm going to get the information out of you. You're the expert in this field and you don't have anything to say? If this plan falls apart, it's going to make me upset that you didn't say something. So when you expect feedback and you allow people to talk in a risk-free environment, then they're going to do that. But that works for men and women. I know, because I've had it happen. Ruminating. This one makes me nuts. All right. Oh, no, too much. I'm sorry. That's too much. So too much is being too emotional. Now, this is a male and a female problem, right? There's the way that you should behave as a professional. If you're at work, you don't lose your mind, male or female. If you're upset about something, you don't run around screaming and hollering, male or female, right? But it's also an environment. If you have an environment where you say, look, you know, doing that stuff's not acceptable, losing your mind and flipping out every time something happens. Now, as I've said before, in all of my years as a leader, when I was in charge, I did raise my voice and lose my mind a couple times, but it was when people were being completely unsafe and doing really stupid stuff. But guess how impactful that was? Everybody knew, oh my gosh, this is important, because he never loses his mind, right? So yeah, too much is you need to keep yourself in check. You need to behave as a good member of society, right? So that's making that a uniquely female thing bothers me, because that's just saying that women are too emotional. Are they? I've met some guys that are, a little questionable about how over the top they are. Ruminating. This one bothers me, right? It says you shouldn't spend time thinking about stuff. And the way that they describe it is you're looking at the things that you've screwed up and thinking that you're worthless because of it. Well, to me, ruminating is something that you absolutely should do, right? Male or female. Hey, I made this decision and I didn't kind of get the right vibe from people when I did it. What happened? Or it seemed like I was doing the right thing, but the results were a little questionable. I'm not sure what's going on. Let me think about it. Let me go ask some questions. Let me go find out. Now, just because you made a mistake, you've heard me say it before, really great leaders have about an 80% success rate in decision making, but they've got a 100% decision making rate. So the 20% where you made a mistake, well, what was it? What did you do wrong? What could you learn better? What can you learn from that you can teach to somebody else? Right? And so to say that you shouldn't think about what you've been doing and how your decisions impacted the environment, that's not smart. That's absolutely what you should do. And that's not a woman or a male or female thing. Right? That's the vigilance part. Okay? And then letting your radar distract you, again, it's the exact opposite. If you have something going on, you walk in, big project going on, you go, something doesn't feel right. Something's not right. Let me go see what's going on. And next thing you know, you find out that some catastrophic event is going to happen that was going to derail the entire project. Well, then you should do that. If you get singularly focused on one thing at the expense of all others, and then the conditions change, you're going to fail. Right? And so what this means is that like I said, all these examples are somebody somewhere. Hey, I got a problem. I found this problem. No, your job is to do this task at hand. Oh, okay. Let me ignore that problem. And then you get the big numbers. So you please the person. It's like some of these things contradict each other too, right? Letting your radar distract you and then the disease to please. Because somebody says, here's what I want, and there's a problem, that suddenly you please them, and then the fact that you didn't follow up on the problem that you felt causes things to be worse. Well, then what happens? Well, then nobody's happy. So just like we talked about, the characteristics, humility, integrity, empathy, vigilance, and then the talent to lead are not gender specific. And if we're just going to do a bunch of this stuff, all we're going to do is create the same garbage environment that these things were written for, right? We should have humility. You should have leaders that are checking. You should have people that are coming in after you get promoted and doing follow-up and doing mentorship and doing coaching, right? You should put your job before your career. You should be the best at your job. And maybe your job ends up being that you're really good at getting people to produce more than they think. And people go, oh my gosh, that person's a leader. Or it turns out you're the absolute skill expert. Well, then you should get a pay raise. And that's what we've talked about in the solution. That's what's broken in some of these current companies. You might be the most competent person, but because of your pay grade, you can't get paid any more money. But you're the best person in the whole company at it. You should get more money. Mr. Wonderful said that. I saw some quote from him a couple years ago. He said there's several times where when he was the boss of a company, he paid the experts more than he was making. Of course you should. Right? Of course you should, because then those people keep working for you. So, like I said, this book, the reason that it's frustrating is because it was written in response to really bad environments. And really bad examples. And instead of saying, well, here's the way to go against those examples, here's the way to be the better version of that and be a role model, it's here's how to manipulate your way into that system. So it's a clever solution to a toxic problem. Anyway, again, like I said, I'm going to close with this. I've talked to several people, let's say probably 40 people since I started this thing about leadership. And when I asked that question, who would you voluntarily follow for no reason other than they asked, a third of them said a woman. And guess what they described? Humility, integrity, empathy, vigilance, sound decisions, didn't, took credit, or not took credit, but took responsibility for stuff, sounded blah, 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 blah. So the archetypical leadership model works for both sides. And that's what we should be aiming at. That's the standard. Because now that if we take that standard and apply this to it, suddenly you see where the issues are. All right, enough babbling. So, How Women Rise, published April 10, 2018. I think I read it in May of 2018. And then I started this project at the end of 2018. And the publisher is Hachette Books. Not a sponsored review, as always. Worth looking at, but then also understand that that's what you're going to get out of it. Is if you've looked at this, then you see what it was written in response to. All right. Thank you very much for your time, and I hope you have a great day.